Hello, everyone. Today we'll be talking about Stoicism and negative visualizations. So let us begin. So Stoicism is a philosophy that is a response to Aristotelianism, and it's a response that abandons some of the main elements of Aristotle and goes back to Socrates. The Stoics see themselves as returning to some sense the purity of the Socratic conception of the good life. For Socrates, the good life is one of dedicated to thinking, is one of dedicated to the life of virtue. And crucially, for Socrates, what makes life worth living is something that is within the control of everyone. The agent, the person, has control over what makes them happy. So it is central for Socrates to make people think for themselves so they can find out the truth and thereby make their soul better, more virtuous, more knowledgeable. And that is what makes them happy. The good of the body for Socrates is health, and that's valuable, but that's not as valuable as the good of the soul, which is virtue. So one of the great beauties of Socrates from the Stoic perspective is that the happy life, the good life, is within the reach of control of everyone. When we get to Aristotle, he also thinks that the good life is one in which the soul is developed, virtue is developed. But Aristotle is going to emphasize things like part of the development of the soul or the virtues include things like engagement with society, so having a good reputation, a life of honor, in fact, having some enough wealth so you have time to like do studies and things like that. So Aristotle is going to think of the good life as this life that is embedded in society and that can only really happen. You can only really have a good life if you live in a good society and you can partake from the goods that happen in the society. So from the Stoic perspective, that becomes a problem because you have no control over the society you find yourself in. And now whether or not you're happy, whether or not you have a good life, depends to a large extent on things outside of your control. And Stoics are not going to like this. They're going to go back to the conception of the good life that is within the control of the agent. Anyway, that's the basic picture. And they're going to say virtue is what makes your life worth living, but they're going to add elements that are also, they think, within the control of the agent. And one is this inner peace, the sense of tranquility, emotional tranquility of the life of the person, this kind of independence from things around them, this kind of healthy detachment from anything that is external to and beyond the control of the agent. Those are going to be essential elements to the Stoic conception of the good life that were just not present in Plato, Aristotle, or Socrates. So it's Stoicism is really the Socratic conception of the good life with the tranquility, peace, and independence, healthy detachment to things outside of your control. That's the heart of the Stoic conception of the good life. But let's enter this conception of the good life by looking at negative visualizations. So here's a quote, the first quote from the chapter we're reading, Negative Visualizations. It's the first sentence. Any thoughtful person would periodically contemplate the bad things that can happen to him. So that's a strange quote, right? You might think like, wait a minute, what? Thoughtful people think about bad things that happen to them? Like that seems counterintuitive, right? There's this element in our culture that says, if you want to be happy, concentrate on the positive, concentrate on the positive. Why? Because if you look at the negative, you're going to be sad, you're going to be upset. And if you're sad and upset, you're not happy, kind of by definition, right? Happy is the lack of sadness and not be frustrated and anxious. And the Stoics are going to disagree with the conception of the good life, that, having positive emotions is good and negative emotions is bad. Um, but they're going to think it is not the case that concentrating on the good is what makes you have a life of positive emotions and divorce from negative emotions. In fact, I think the opposite is the case. So to engage in practices of negative visualizations is exactly to do this, to think about the bad things that can happen. You're in a loving relationship, you care about your partner, you think it contributes to your happiness. A wise person, a thoughtful person, claims that Stoic contemplates prospects of you breaking up. Your partner leaves you, you get disenchanted with the relationship. You think about those topics. You have parents that you love and they're pretty healthy. A thoughtful, wise person, says the Stoics, think about the prospect of your parents getting ill and eventually even dying, and so on, right? So you have something valuable, something that brings joy to your life, something that's meaningful. The Stoic says, if you're wise, you think about prospects, you visualize scenarios in which you lose that. You lose the good that you have. And you might think, well, why would I want to do that? Why would a wise person want to do that? Here's some of the kind of benefits of doing that. The main one, the one that a lot of people do that is, is to prevent things from happening, right? So when it comes to say a house, you buy this house and you're very happy with it, and you enjoy the house. And if you never think about the bad things that can happen, then bad things might much more likely happen, like someone might break into, right? If you never think of the prospect of someone breaking into it, you might not say lock your door to prevent things from happening, or other things that can go wrong with the house, like the plumbing or something like that. If you never think about what things can go wrong with the house, you're not going to actually look into and try to prevent those things from happening. But if you think about, oh, what if a pipe bursts, then you can think, oh, well, let me look into it, make sure that my pipes are in good condition when winter hits. So thinking about bad things, it's actually a good way of preventing them from actually coming into being, from them happening. And that's what most people tend to do when they kind of instinctively think about, oh, what's something bad that might happen, so you can prevent it. And the Stoics think, yeah, that's one of the benefits. However, for the Stoics, that's not the main benefit. The Stoics think it is foolish to try to prevent all bad things from happening. Why? Because there are too many bad things out there. Some bad things will happen. So the practice of visualizing bad things from happening is not to prevent them all. There are way too many bad things out there. Bad things will happen to you. So prevent as many as you can. That's fine. But the main benefits are the following. One, I guess two. One of the main benefits, second benefit in the list, is to lessen the negative emotions when bad things do happen. So the heartbreak that happens if your relationship is ended, um, would be diminished significantly if, when you were in the relationship, you were kind of like sensitive to the fact that it wasn't necessarily permanent. That one of the realistic options was that things wouldn't work out, right? If you have this like healthy detachment to the goodness of the relationship, then if it doesn't, it won't be as painful. If your parents get ill, and all parents get ill, when they're laying in the hospital, it will not feel so terrible. They will not feel so horrible if you've been mentally preparing for those things. You'll still experience the negative emotions, but they wouldn't be as painful. They won't be as bad. And for the Stoics, again, the basic conception of the good life, it essentially includes this peace and tranquility, this inner emotional peace. So let the negative emotions, anger, fear, anxiety, frustration, and so on, they're always bad. Like there's no context in which they help you. They necessarily end up by your tranquility. That's what makes them bad emotions. So practices like negative visualization help you reduce those things and thereby help you retain tranquility. Here's the other essential element for the Stoic conception of the good life. By engaging in practices of negative visualization and thereby giving you more control over your emotional life, you increase your freedom, your inner freedom, not just freedom to do things in the world, but more importantly for the Stoic, freedom to govern, freedom to dictate the way in which your inner psychological life works out, right? The emotions are very inner psychological elements of our life. And for the Stoic, it matters that you take control over that inner life. So by taking those steps in negative visualization, you not only diminish the negative emotions, which is itself worth doing, but you thereby increase your freedom. You thereby deprive those things external to you of their power over your inner tranquility. You thereby increase your independence from things around you. And that, the Stoics think, by themselves is a mark of a good life. That you have inner freedom, that you have control over your inner mental life, and you have this kind of healthy independence from things outside of you. That is an essential mark of the good life by itself. And the negative visualization practices help you attain that too. So Erwin, the author of the book, actually thinks that main benefit is that negative visualizations give you what he calls mitigation of hedonic adaptation. Um, 2 and 3 are the classic elements of the good life that the Stoics add to the Socratic conception of the good life. It is 4 that is something new, that is something cool, and that Irwin thinks is one of the most invaluable things that the Stoics have to offer contemporary people. So let's talk a little bit more about hedonic adaptation. So here's an observation about humans. Humans get used to the things in their life. So at some point, Erwin says something like, most people are living the dream, and not just like a dream, but your own dream. So you're a teenager and you think, oh, it would be great if I go to college. Wow, there's this wonderful dream of going to college. And like now you're living your own dream. or there's this, you have this crush on this person, and like you build up the courage and you ask them out, then like now you're going out with them. Or there's this team that you really want to be a part of the team, and you put a lot of effort and time into it, and at one point in your life you dream of, like, you have this great, desire, aspiration of being a part of that dream, of that team, and now you're in the team, right? So we are, a lot of us, living our own dreams. So a few years ago, we were dreaming to be in the position in which we find ourselves now. So that's one observation. But the related observation, which is not, as encouraging, is that we get used to the thing that we acquired. We strive for so long, sometimes years, to get this thing that we think is going to be so valuable, this job, this position, this career, this relationship, something. And once we get it, we enjoy it for a little bit, but then after a while, and typically not too long, we kind of get used to it. We kind of get bored with it. We think like, oh yeah, 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 this is my job. Oh yeah, yeah, this, I'm in this team. We get used to, and sometimes bored with, the things that we so greatly aspire to attain. So the familiarity with the having of this wonderful good tend to produce boredom. You just, used to and tired. Then the cycle it generates. So a cycle of pursuing new goals ensues, right? So you have this great goal, being part of the team, and now you get it, you're there, but then after a while you think like, yeah, yeah, whatever. Okay, now I'm gonna be one of the best players in the team, and then you strive for that, and then you are one of the best players, and think like, oh yeah, whatever, I'm here, right? So there's this. Irwin says, people find themselves in this satisfaction treadmill, right? There's this cycle of having a goal, putting a lot of efforts, working very hard, and then getting it and have dissatisfaction, but then getting bored with it and then finding another goal. And if it is something like material accumulation, you might think, yeah, but things are getting bigger and better, right? So you want to have a car, and you're a teenager, you work in the evenings, and then you buy this old car, and you think like, wow, I have this old car. But then you get a more nice paying job, and you want a bigger car or a more expensive car or a newer car, and then you get that one, right? So you can think of like the object of your desires getting increasingly bigger. So there's a sense in which you think, well, I'm progressing, right? My car is getting more, fancy and more faster and things like that. My house is getting bigger or something like that. So if you look at the object of your desires, you might think, hey, things are going great because things are getting better. But the Stoic will point out, you should not measure your happiness by the object of your desires as such. You should measure happiness by the satisfaction you have with your life. And the point of this treadmill is that in terms of satisfaction with what you have, you don't really move very far, right? You just desire something, and then you get it, satisfied, but then you're bored. So you try something else. And when you're bored, you like lose the like fascination, satisfaction with the thing that you wanted. So in terms of satisfaction with your life, which for the Stoics is what makes your life worth living, you don't really advance too much. And that's kind of a condemnation of the human predicament, right? It's not a very pleasant thing to say. It's not a very optimistic thing to say about human condition. So for Erwin, the writer, the author of the book, he thinks that visualization, the main point is that it helps you push back against this hedonic adaptation. It helps you like get out of this satisfaction treadmill. So visualizing losing the good things that we do have, being in the team, being in this university, being in this relationship, instead of like when we get bored and instead of looking for something else, we should think about, wait a minute, I already have something very valuable here. The visualization of losing that rejuvenates the satisfaction, the appreciation of the thing that is before you. You are living the dream that your own dream of a few years ago, right? And you just got bored and used to it. If you think about the prospect of not having it, it might rejuvenate that original kind of like desire to have the thing you have. So it is wiser, the Stoic would say, rejoice in what you have than not to rejoice in it, right? The satisfaction treadmill presupposes that you get bored and you just have to move on for you to attain satisfaction. There's something wise in learning to appreciate and rejoice in the thing you do have. And negative visualizations enable you to do that. So they're not like lying to yourself, right? And there's a sense in which the hedonic adaptation is the one that is lying to yourself, because you do have a good in front of you. The negative visualization is a way for you to be awakened to refresh, to remind you that you do have something valuable, right? So it's not deluding you into rejoicing into that which is not worth having. It's on the contrary, it's like waking you from, dream, waking you from the lack of recognition that what you have in front of you is worth having. For Irwin, this is the most powerful tool that Stoics have: ability to get outside of, or at least to mitigate the consequences of hedonic adaptation and to try to step outside of the satisfaction treadmill. So let's look at an example to illustrate negative visualizations and like stepping out of the treadmill. How does this work in practice? So consider a hypothetical case of two parents, parent A and parent B. Suppose that both parents have two children. Here's a picture of a parent with two children. So both parent A and parent B have two children. Parent A engages in practice of negative visualization, right? So the parent A takes the kid to bed, kisses them. They spend a couple of, minutes or so, a minute, thinking, well, my child may, not be here tomorrow. Either, they will die, which is true. It's hard to think about, but perhaps something less hard to think about. The child is going to grow in a few years and they're going to go to college. They're going to, I'm not going to be able to have them this close to me. So the parent A contemplates that on a regular basis, perhaps a daily basis. The years that I have with my children are passing by quickly. In a few years, they will leave and they're going to go and have their own lives. So they're visualizing the losing of the very valuable thing they have, namely their children. Parent B does not realize, like most people, they just do what they do. They don't think about the future. They constantly, they don't think about the negative things in the future. Here's what the Stoics thinks will happen. Parent A will rejoice upon seeing her son still with her. So the next morning at night, the parent thought, well, my child is going to leave me in a few years, and they contemplate that. The next morning when they wake up and they see the child still being 3, 4, and still coming and running and saying, "Hey, Daddy," right? Like the father A, parent A, will have this sense of rejoice, the satisfaction with the child. The B won't. B will just say, well, yeah, the child was here last night. Of course he's going to be here, right? Like there's going to be this kind of getting used to the child. Furthermore, parent A, the one with negative visualizations, will make sure to appreciate the little things. Like here, for example, this parent is reading a book, right? If you're engaged in negative visualizations, you might realize, well, in 2 more years, the child's going to learn how to read their books. So they're not going to need me anymore. They're not going to, require the environment in which I'm leading them and I'm teaching them and I'm engaging with them, reading books with them. So they would appreciate the few occasions in which you can sit with your kids and read their books and kind of laugh together at whatever happened in the book. Parent B will not be as sensitive to the value of those moments because they just had one the other before, right? They will just get used to. Of course, you read to each other, that's what you do at night, right? And they will enter the hedonic adaptation in the stage, and they will not be as appreciative of the little moments like reading books to children. Parent A would, because they're going to be conscious of this is temporary, this is transient, I will lose this in the near future. So that's the 1 and 2 are the kind of rejuvenation or an emphasis of the positive emotions of the goods that one has. 3 is kind of the opposite side of the same coin. It would diminish, engaging in a negative visualization will diminish the negative emotions. So parent A will be less likely to be angry or upset or resentful with the children when the children misbehave, and children will misbehave. So when the child like breaks into the parents' room and starts coloring on their books or something like some transgression, that anger seems to be a natural response. Parent B is much more likely to just be upset and like, oh, I told you not to get into my books, and like that's a very natural parent response with the child misbehave, right? The anger, the frustration, being upset. Parent A, says the Stoic, well, by thinking of the prospect of losing the children, realize that, hey, this is a minor thing. This thing of, that I'm being upset about is so insignificant. And why waste my time being upset with a child when they're going to leave in a few years, right? Let's the intensity of the anger or the negative emotion will dissipate, will diminish, precisely because parent A is aware of the fact that these days are passing by quickly. It is not worth our while to waste them being angry, because being angry only hurts both of our relationships. So finally, when the moment does come that the children do leave, and it will come, I mean, that's part of the Stoic conception, bad things will happen. Seeing the bad things, conceiving, visualizing bad things helps. and sometimes helps prevent, but a lot of times it can't, because some things cannot be prevented, some bad things cannot be prevented. Children will leave either because they pass away, hopefully that doesn't happen, or just because they grow up and they move on, right? They cease to be children, they become adults. So a parent will lose their children as children, right? The children will go away. That they will come. Here's what the Stoics say. Parent A, who engaged in negative visualizations, when the moment comes that the child leaves, uh, parent A will be more kind of able to cope with the fact. He will have a kind of more distant, not distant, but a healthy detachment from the event. The bad thing will happen, the separation from a child. Well, I guess they've been thinking about it for a long time, right? They know it's coming, and when it comes, they'll be more emotionally mature to deal with it. Parent B will be hit right when they drop off the kid at college. Everything's great. They start crying. They go back home, and suddenly the empty house is gonna like be very clear in the parent. Oh, wait a minute! All of the shouting, all of the noise is ceased. Like my child is no longer here, right? Parent B is just gonna be struck by the the good that I had has left. Like I no longer have this good, right? So it's gonna be more kind of grieving, more upset. The negative emotions are gonna be more empowered. Um, but anyway, the Stoics say, and this is just this example of the parents is a generalizable example. That's what happens with anything that is good that we have. Negative visualizations create a healthy detachment, which enables us to appreciate the good things and also to lessen or diminish the negative emotions when bad things happen with things we love. It is good to engage in negative emotions for our own inner peace and tranquility. So, Stoics think that one of the things you should think about negative emotions is your own death. So you shouldn't only look around and like, oh, my parents are going to get old and my children are going to graduate, relationship may not work. You should think about all those things. But you should also come to terms with the fact that you will die. Everyone will. So Stoics recommend that you actually like visualize yourself laying in the hospital bed and like doctor told you, hey, you have a couple of months left or something, that your death is imminent. And you should do that, the Stoics think, so that you can come to this kind of realization. I should live life like it's my last day. And partly because any day can in fact be your last day. It's possible for that to be. But crucially, because you will reach a point in which that day will be your last day, right? So the end is inevitable. It's just we don't know when it's going to happen. And that would create this sense of both a healthy detachment from things that would lessen the negative emotions, but also would enable us to appreciate the little things, enable us to appreciate the moment. So live in the moment, appreciate the day. That's the kind of thing the Stoics say. And a lot of people say that to mean things like seek thrills, excesses, make reckless, decisions, like live a little. Like when you hear people say live a little, they mean like take, risks and, go to Vegas and gamble your money and things like that. That's certainly not what Stoics mean. Stoics mean something like live your life without wasting it. Think of every moment as valuable, precious commodity that is passing, that may be your last. So appreciate, enjoy, live your life by rejoicing in the good things you have in it. So live your life like it's your last. It's really a call for live a good life. But that doesn't settle what the good life is, right? That you can have a different conception of the good life. And people that say things like, hey, live a little, this like live like it's your last day. They have this conception of the good life as a life of like thrills and enjoyments, like excesses of enjoyments, which the Stoics will say is a foolish conception because you can only enjoy so much, and then you set up yourself for failure. If you go to Vegas and gamble your money, then you're going to come back home and you have no money, right? Like so it's not a good long-term strategy for a good life. It's actually not a good life. So anyway, let's end there. I will see you next time.